with others within your organization. To begin with, I would like to give you an insight on our today's agenda. So first, we will start with a short introduction from Håkan Engman from Business Development. Then you and Yoroson will give you an overview of our latest product news and everything that it is in development. Irma Ali will show some tips and tricks. And then I will go over with some user stories. And we will close up with some questions that you can leave here during the presentation on the chat. I would also like to welcome today a guest presenter from Yerfo, our partner in France, that will also have a short presentation over one of their projects. And before handing over to Håkan, if we go to the next slide, please. I would like to also remind you that you can always stay connected with us. You can sign up for our users newsletter. I will paste the link here in the chat. You can also reach us through our support. You can find our direct support button on the top right corner of our editor interface. And as always, you can visit our forum and communities where you can share and find all OpenCities Planner related questions. And never forget that we regularly release some blog posts. You will always get notifications, and you can always read them and find what is new with OpenCities Planner. So thank you once again for your attention today, and handing over to Håkan. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning. So I'm Håkan Engman. So just before going over to the exciting agenda about OpenCities Planner and new features and news, etc., and the other things, just wanted to give some perspective of what we are doing. So in Bentley, we are very much focused on advancing the infrastructure, helping with different tools to improve the sustainability, resilience, but also the a more efficient operation, of course, and in the end serve better service to stakeholders and citizens and passengers in different operations like airports and seaports, etc. And we work with also project delivery and the ecosystem delivering into kind of cities and campus areas. And you can see some of the applications where we are touching with our solution. So next slide, please. So the urban digital twin is very much central in our offering. This is to provide a structure to the digital transformation and the data, all the data that is going to be needed for many of the advanced applications that we are targeting onwards. So and OpenCities Planner is one of the key components of the urban digital twin solution to provide a holistic view of the infrastructure that you manage to actually easily access critical data to serve data-driven decisions, but also components for automating processes and workflows, and to use for collaboration to key stakeholders, internal and external stakeholders. So next slide, please. In our solution and connected to the OpenCities Planner, we consider our solution in Bentley as probably the most open and comprehensive and powerful digital twin solution. Meaning that we can federate all kinds of data, very powerful data management capabilities, not only the map layers of GIS data and 3D models, etc., city models, but also the reality data, the point clouds, reality mesh, and imagery, to be served by different formats and different collection methods, by mobile or drones or other capturing methods, into the same federated model, as well as the very powerful engineering data management with the since we are powered by Itwin services, with the connectors to most of the common formats of design models and CAD models, etc., where they can be connected into the digital twin and federated together to give this holistic view of the asset. And we probably see an evolution of kind of managing not only the BIM data or the GIS data, but the combination of data, and to create policies and regulations for the format and etc., and how they would fit into the digital twin to be able to serve ongoing applications during the life cycle of the asset. For IoT sensors and the operation aspect of things, and originating from the design data. So next slide, please. Also, I wanted to highlight, so to say, the OpenCities Planner being one component of the whole range of products that are applicable for many of these sectors that we are describing here, the cities and the campuses, airports, seaports, etc., but also in the other sectors of transportation and owners of different kinds. So OpenCities Planner and OpenCities is one key component, but we have extensions into managing the reality data, content management, feature extraction, etc. The engineering context to handle all the engineering data across large capital projects, and also for asset operation. Water management, handling drainage and supply water, etc., and also simulating weather events, flooding, etc. But also the subterranean digital twin as well for geotechnical solution, and mobility studies and modeling mobility flows for important input out for planning purposes, etc., and many other applications as well. So thank you very much. Leave it to the next speaker. Thank you and welcome.
All right, thank you, Håkan. So my name is Johan Göransson, product manager for OpenCities Planner, and I will be talking about the product development and the releases we have done for OpenCities Planner, and also a little bit about upcoming things. So I kind of want to start with reiterating a few of the news that we went over the last time. Because we have released most of the features that we discussed being in development last time. So starting with the iModel updating process in OCP, we talked about the ad hoc kind of updating, dragging and dropping Revit files, IPC files, BIM models, engineering files just onto the OpenCities Planner editor to upload them. And then in that process, an iModel would be created automatically. At that point, it wasn't possible to select to update into an existing iModel, but we have developed that capability, and this has now been released. So when you drag and drop a design file or a BIM file onto the editor, you have the option to either create a new iModel or to select an existing one, and this will create a new version automatically when you do that. So this has been released, and I hope you have tried it out. Another new feature that we talked about being development last time was the draw tools that we are adding to the editor interface. This allows you to very simply draw polygons and lines in the editor. And these can be clickable, and they can support the usual actions. And then they are saved as an object in the project. So you can just treat them as any other feature object, just put them in a layer or in the background or whatever. This has also been released, so it's available to you right now. Another thing that we discussed being in development last time was the possibility of making all the content that you have created in the editor also searchable. We used to only support searchable features coming from Data Manager, but now it's possible to search enable the manually created points that you have created in the editor. So you can enable that with a new setting in the search settings on the manage and settings. And so this supports poise, it supports the labels and also the content of the details window. It supports the details window of 3D models, and it supports the details windows of the drawn features. This is also released and available for you to try out. We did some improvements of the Terraform. I talked about this last time as well. So we have better visual representation or visualization of the nodes. We have support to add and remove nodes after you have drawn a Terraform, and this is also available and has been released. Switching to some new things, we have done a redesign of the attributes window, and this affects both the attributes window of the eye models as well as the spatial sources like shape files or WFS sources coming from Data Manager. So it's nice and clean. It supports grouping. It's a lot more user-friendly to the user, I would say, than the previous one. There's also new options in the settings when you configure an on-click with attributes as the action. You can filter based on group level, and that's primarily for eye models. But for instance, here you could kind of exclude or include entire groups, and you don't have to actually define the individual attributes. You can just type in the group level name and use that as filtering. And so this has actually also been released and is available. You don't really have to do anything. It will be the new look automatically. 3D tiles and web-ready scalable meshes. We added support for uploading those into Data Manager a while back, and you know, this is reality models, reality data. We have now also updated and added support so we can read this directly from Context Share, meaning you don't have to download it from Context Share and re-upload it to Data Manager. You can just go into under Files, pick Context Share, and then select the Connect project that you want to that your data sets are configured for, and then just set up a source based on that. So this means that there's no data copy. We actually have better performance when we go through this pipeline than if you upload it directly into Data Manager, and it's just easier for you, especially the users who are using reality models within other applications in the Itwin platform as well. It will be the same source of information. And this has also been released and is available for you guys to try out. Another thing that we are working on, or this will be released this week, I think. We have made a new setting for email invitations in the Team Manager, meaning that you can choose whether OCP automatically sends an email invite to the users that you add to the project or not. And we have actually changed so that the default is to not send an email invitation. And the reason for this setting and for this change of the default behavior is that we see that many of our users have kind of more complex project setups where the actual project is the combination of many OCP projects. So for instance, you might have a start screen that leads to a portal that leads to several projects. And if you give access to the user to all of these projects on their individual level, OCP used to send out email invitations for each time that you added the user to one of the individual projects, leading to kind of the user getting spammed with OCP emails. So with this setting, you can choose when you send out this email invitation, or if you don't want to send it out at all. You can also add a custom message to this invitation, so you can actually tell your user what they got access to. And you can also choose if you want to use the project URL instead of the URL that leads the user to the editor. So by default, the user will get a link in the email, they would click that, and it would open up in the editor interface. But if you want to avoid that and just send it to the project view, you can choose the use project URL instead. So again, this will be available this week. And finally, Showroom, which is the desktop application that we have built for showroom uses, exhibition uses. This is getting a new version. We are switching the technology that we're building this application with. So because we want to support eye models in the showroom application as well, so we kind of have to do a little bit of technology change here. And this means that this is now the new version of Showroom is going to be a hybrid version. So it will require internet for certain parts. For instance, eye models, there is no way to synchronize them to the desktop. So you will need an internet connection to run it. But the benefit is that it will always be on the exact same feature and maturity level as the online version. It will support the same things. It will be configured the same way. And in addition to that, it will support local map data sets like the terrain models, the city models, the reality models. Those can be snapshotted in Data Manager and then synchronized to the local computer. These data sets are usually the most heavy and internet intense components or content in the project. So this will give you a better overall performance, even though you need internet for certain parts of this user experience. It also has a new configuration GUI. It's more user friendly to configure it. And we have released an alpha version to pilot users, so they have started testing it out. We still have some work left to do before we can release it in a final version. Primarily, it's the automatic synchronization of map data sets that have been snapshotted in Data Manager. That's a manual process to configure today, but will be fully automatic. Let's have a look at some things that we are currently developing for OCP. One major feature enhancement or new capability that we are developing is the query tool or the advanced searching tool. This is a user-friendly query tool which lets the user query the eye model based on single or multiple parameters, and then logical operators like equals, not equals, less than, more than. So for instance, we can ask the eye model questions, simple things like show me all the objects of a certain type, and it will look through the parameter or the properties of the eye model, and then hand back a list of the objects that hits the query that you specified, and the user can highlight them in the map. We kind of ghost out all the other components, all the graphical components that are not affected by the query or wasn't hit by the query. You can fly to a component in the list, and of course you can bring up the attributes window and things like that. But there's really no limitation on how many parameters or how specific you want to be with your query. So you can keep adding on lines with a new attribute query. So you can do things like show me all buildings that are taller than 40 meters or any number. Or you can do very advanced things like show all the buildings in a a certain module on my campus that are developed in a certain phase and that are taller than 40 meters, or they have some certain material, or they are developed by a certain real estate developer, for instance. This all depends, of course, of the data that's actually in the iModel. So you're kind of limited to the properties that you have, but if there's rich information in the iModels, this querying tool can help you, can enable your users to really dig down into the information and find exactly what they're looking for. Another thing that we're doing with this querying tool is that the admin can do predefined queries and then link them to a layer button, for instance. So here I have a group and I have several layers, and all these layers are executing predefined queries. So the queries are fairly simple here. It's isolating buildings that are on in a certain module on this campus. So you can see when I click on module A, it highlights the buildings that are in module A, and it kind of goes out, dims everything else that's not part of, that doesn't respond to that result. So this means that admins can prepare quite advanced queries or simple queries for the users, and the users just have to click a button to execute them. So I think this will be a nice user-friendly way of exposing this powerful capability to the users. Okay, that's it from product development. I will hand it over to Irma to show some hands-on how-tos. Thank you.
I will have to hijack this. Okay. So today I am not gonna show any new features, how our new features work. Instead, I'm gonna do some tips and tricks that we actually stole from our users. So we have seen throughout, I think the entire year, that our users have been very creative, and they have created some different ways of doing things that we figure were very user-friendly and I think helpful to all of our users. So we're actually stealing their creative ideas and then showing it to all of you. Hopefully you can benefit from those tips as well. So I'm starting today with a project from a user. So thank you again, Jari, for allowing us to demo this project here. Because it's going to serve as a good example of how to use the first trick, which is adding a video. First, I'm going to start by explaining what Jari actually did here in this project, which is a very interesting use case. It's a project visualizing different ways of energy use with windmills. And what Jari wanted to do here was he wanted to explain to the users in the project info panel by various different images, but also tips how to use the project. After he opened the project info panel, instead of adding the viewpoint to kind of look at the overview of the windmills, he focused the start view right at the point of interest here that he added on the bottom, in order to focus the users to that point, and so that the users will click the point because there was an instructional video that he wanted the users to see, because it explains how to navigate to the project. So the intent here was that he wanted the users to look at the video, but he didn't know what was the best way to give this video to the users. So what we suggested here was that he added that video into the project info panel. So when the user comes here, they don't have to read instructions through screenshots of images. Instead, they can look at the video directly from here. So how do you do this? You go, let me just move one step before here. Go to the project info, you click it with the edit tool, you bring up the description, and here you go to look at how the source code looks like. You find a place where you want to paste your video, and now what do? So if you go back to YouTube, you have to grab the embed code. So it's not enough to grab the URL of the YouTube. You actually have to click on the share button and click on embed, and then grab this iframe code and place that inside. So you just copy it and place it wherever you want in the project info and click save. So now I have to reopen the project info and you'll see what it looks like. So this is different from just embedding a YouTube video on a project info, because if you go to the embed option on our settings, you will only then have the YouTube video. But in case if you want to have the images, you want to have the text and a YouTube video, this would be kind of the how to do this. So now the YouTube video is embedded as a part of the project info. What is important here to look for are the dimensions and the position for the YouTube video. So if I go back again to the code, here in the code, I will drag your attention to the width and the height that here are added in pixel values. Sometimes the YouTube will add them in percentage, so make sure to remove that percentage and add pixel values. So here I'm showing that it's the same width and height as in YouTube. So in case you get a code with percentage, just switch that to pixel value and that should work. So this has been used by several of our users. We realized it was very popular, and so we figured it would be useful to show our other users how to do this. Tip number 2 would be to add it to a layer button. So we've been showing before that we have a new thing that's on-click option for the layers. I don't know if any of our users have been using it before, but the way that you could have added on-click to a POI, the same way you can do that to a layer now. So you don't have to direct the user to a POI on the screen. Instead, the user can just click on a layer here and then open the video. So maybe if you have a layer that also has different content showing, like a layer that opens up a bunch of POIs, if you want to add a YouTube video to it as well, you can now do that. So this is another way to do a similar thing. What I did here was I didn't like the size of the screen because it was too small, so I just pasted the same ratio or size that I grabbed from YouTube as well. So this would be tip number 1. So now the user can actually have a start screen that looks at the overview of the entire project instead of focusing on that POI to open the YouTube video. Second tip is going to be something very, we think, interesting. It's based on design review. We're going to do a bit of design review and a bit of OCP. I'm starting with thematic coloring, but it's more than just thematic coloring of iModels. It's also, you can do cross sections, you can do different styles of your models, and then you can bring them in OCP through the setting of saved views. I don't know if you've noticed it before. So this is actually going to explain how the saved views work, why they're here, and what are all the cool things that you can do with it. So I'm starting with thematic coloring. So let's say you have just building volumes that have different attribute groups with different values. And you want to color code them depending on what theme it is or what values they have. So here in Design Review, there is a data visualization tool that you can go to. Here in the property, I have chosen floors, which is the category that I'm going to color things by. And then when I clicked on generate, it showed that the volumes had these values as in floors. So floor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or they could have been in meter high. It all depends on how your data is structured and what the information in the buildings is. So under the category of floors, I had this information, and then it generated some colors by default. But you can click on each one of those colors and change it manually, either by dragging the pick color or just by adding a hex code here. So you can do that for every of the colors, and then in the end you add the name of the theme that you have created. So I called this one floors. So now here you see that all the buildings are now color coded depending on what kind of attribute values they have. And now each one of these are toggleable, like they have their own group now that you can toggle on and off. So then this was the first group, but I also have 2 more to go. So the second group that I am choosing here is value. This is a very generic name, so to speak. Value could be actually an attribute for anything. So let's say that you have various different values for these buildings. Again, you generate it, and depending on what kind of attributes they have inside, they change the colors. The last one is zoning. This could be usage or anything similar. So if you have, I don't know, commercial buildings, residential buildings, industrial buildings, whatever, then you can also, if that information is inside, you can generate it automatically, give it a color, and now it's saved. So now I've created 3 different themes with different colors, and as I toggle them on, you see how the object colors, the colors of the objects change and get updated. So what I want to do here with that is to bring those different themes into OCP. I mean, here I used floors, value, zoning. It could have been anything depending on what kind of information in the model you have. So what are the next steps? I clicked here on the bottom. Let me just rewind that part again. I clicked here on the bottom. There's this setting called saved views. So here you can create a snapshot of whatever change you did to your iModel. So just by clicking on this camera icon, you create a snapshot of whatever you're seeing right now. Since I selected zoning, this created a snapshot of the color coding with zoning turned on. So now I clicked on value, and again, I'm creating a new snapshot, and I'm going to name this one value. And the third one is going to be floors. So again, I'm going to go back to the data visualization tool here, select floors, it will change the colors, and I'm going to create a snapshot of that state of the iModel. So now this kind of saved the iModel in these colors, and now these screenshots I can use in OCP. As you can see, when I toggle them off, they change the colors depending on the values that were added. An important thing for this to work, all of these have to be shared. So you have to toggle this share button. They have to be accessible publicly in order for OCP to reach it. If they're not shared, OCP will not recognize them. So now we're going to OCP, and let's see how we add them into our projects. And here I'm going to go over very briefly some of the steps that we showed last time, which was how to connect an OpenCities Planner project to an Itwin project where your iModels are. So you go to settings, you click on an existing Itwin project in case you already have one, which is what we have because we already worked with an iModel in design review. So I select where that iModel sits, and now I'm connected to that project. So now I can go to the other button, which is iModels, and then see what iModels I have inside of that Itwin project. So I select the iModel that I want, that I just looked at, and then it shows it here in OCP. And what you'll see here, I switch from custom to saved views here, and I get a different setting. And what I select here now, as you see, the styling already changed. I go from desktop views to ungrouped because this is where our themes were. So here by default, the first one was selected, which was floors. So if I go to Object Manager, I see I have a layer, and then it has an iModel with floors. So I'm going to just rename this to floors, and then I'm going to duplicate this layer with the iModel inside, and then call this the second thing, which was value. But I have to update now the iModel inside of that layer with the value saved view. So now this changes, and now I'm going to duplicate the same thing again. So now I get another layer. I'm going to call this one floors. I think that was zoning, exactly. So that was the last one that was left, but now I have to change the iModel view to zoning as well. And just like that, in a few minutes, I've created 3 different color themes. First, I have to make the master to allow only one layer so I can show you what it looks like when I toggle one of them on. But just like that, I have created now 3 buttons in my interface, each one of them having a different color theme to it. So this was one of the cool things that you can do. Another cool thing is you can style the iModel as well. I didn't go into too much detail here. I kind of pre-configured them, and just I'm showing you by clicking on a different saved view how they can look like. For instance, this same view has been clipped. The tunnel has been clipped at a certain position. This one is completely monochrome. This one is just the standard eye model. The second one is wireframe. This was a bit heavy to load because it's very heavy in detail. But it's very cool when you zoom in and see all the wireframes of the models. So in case that is necessary or needed for your project, that is also an option with the styles. And now what I'm going to show here is what you can also do by turning on layers on and off. So in design review, we have in OCP, let me pause it. We have in OCP the option for you to turn on and off layers and categories, but we have only one kind of depth that we allow. So we only allow the layers that are there in general, but we don't allow, or we don't have the option of digging into a specific layer and then toggling off an element inside of that layer. And what design review has here is, apart from you having complete control of those layers by toggling them on and off, you can also expand those layers and then go into more detail. For instance, if I want to toggle off the floor slabs, I can go expand the floor slabs and then select which floor slab I want to turn off in specific. So in case the layers and categories in OCP are not enough detailed, you can have more flexibility in design review with this tool. And then again, you create a snapshot and save that and then open it in OCP. So the last thing I'm showing is the cross-section tool, which is, we think, very cool because you can select any surface, even if it's inclined, and then cut it through that surface. And you can save that as a screenshot or a snapshot like we did before, and then open that in OCP. So you can do cross-sections or elevations. For instance, if you have a tall building, you can do cross-sections of every elevation and save that as snapshots and then as layers in OCP, and then you can easily toggle each layer on and off to show different elevations of the building. So this is a pretty cool feature, we think, as well. So here I created the snapshot with this, and now I toggle the snapshots back and forth so that you can see the difference that happened. So by showing this, we're kind of displaying how a powerful tool design review is, but not on its own, but how those tools can be used in OCP as well to enhance your projects. Last thing that I'm showing here is how to create a legend. This is another trick that we stole from a user. So, I mean, I think all of our users by now know that you can use the layers and coloring the layers thematically as a legend in a way. So here you can see that industry, commercial, and residential was color-coded in a layer. The buttons were color-coded. But there's another cool way to do it, because we always wanted to have it in a side panel or a pop-up window with like a legend that shows a rectangle with a color. So how do you do that? What I'm creating here is a new layer. I'm copying the eye model there and just setting it to the theme of zoning, because that's what I'm going to work with. So again, I'm using the on-click option. I'm using details window and opening it as a side panel. So I'm going to call it zoning, and then in the description, I want to add a legend here. So I open this in a Word document. So this is kind of the hack. You kind of have to go through the Word document. These are the things. I could have typed them down here. I don't know why I copied them from here, but you can type it down in OCP. But so what I do here now is I grab shapes and just draw them in this Word document. So in this case, I'm using shapes, but you could just paste an image as well. So if you have an icon as a JPEG, you can add that image here regardless. So I'm just now choosing the colors for them to be the same way that they are in the project. Pasting them first and then realizing that it's hiding the text. So a bit of styling here, but not that much work. And now I am adapting each one of the rectangulars to have the same color value as what we have in the map. So the industrial was in dark red, residential was in dark green, and I think the purple stays the same. So I place this right next to our settings window, and what I do here is I copy and then I paste the shape here into Word. And it is as simple as that. I don't know why in our OCP team we did not figure this out ourselves, but like I said, our creative users had a need for this and then just tested it out with the Word document, and it worked. The same again can be done with images. So now I'm styling this up a bit, adding the legend to look like a header. So if I toggle it on and off, here you can see the legend coming up on the side. I didn't like the black color, so I just updated that to the white one. And here we have the legend. So in case now, since I copied the rectangulars from the Word document, they ended up a bit too big. But what I'm showing here is in case you need to customize the size as well, you can do that here. You don't have to go back and forth in Word anymore. And that's about it. Those are our tips and tricks for today. Dora, I think you can take over now.
Yes, and thank you. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Today I have prepared some user stories, some use cases. The first one comes from Henmap, is a partner of Bentley in Argentina in South America. And they have proven to be a very active OpenCities Planner user these few past months. And they have created a project that is called La Cava, which is on a slum in the province of Buenos Aires. This was a project that wanted to show this complex situation, not of the country, but also of the South America. And what they wanted to show is that with the correct tool, with the correct software, OpenCities Planner, combined with our own data on the hands of key government decision makers, you can make a positive impact. And with that in mind, they have prepared a promo video on their work on OpenCities Planner that I wanted to share also with you.
La planificación urbana sin una plataforma adecuada de comunicación puede ser un proceso frustrante y dar lugar a costosos retrasos y malentendidos.
Oh, I'm sorry.
OpenCities Planner es la solución ideal para crear opciones de diseño, comunicar planes de la ciudad e interactuar con las partes interesadas y el público. En primer lugar, nuestro trabajo consiste en capturar imágenes mediante sensores y cámaras digitales de alta resolución, montadas en aeronaves tripuladas y vehículos de distintos tamaños. Los datos de innumerables edificios, carreteras, vías fluviales y espacios verdes se convierten entonces en un modelo tridimensional. Pero en esta plataforma no solo podemos visualizar lo existente, sino aplicar nuevos proyectos urbanísticos para simular y entender el impacto que tendrán en el entorno. Hablamos de una entidad digital que puede ser anexada a un sitio web para ser vista, compartida y hasta intervenida por los ciudadanos sumando etiquetas con sus comentarios. Una plataforma de acceso fácil, rápido y dinámico desde cualquier dispositivo y sin instalar ninguna aplicación. Un gemelo digital de la ciudad al alcance de todos. Si disfrutaste de este video, seguinos para enterarte de mucho más sobre el mundo de la fotogrametría. Henmap, integrando el mundo físico con el virtual.
So that was from Henmap, and moving on from South America to Europe, then the second project comes from Senayoki city in Finland, and also really very engaged OpenCities Planner user. They have created multiple projects in OpenCities Planner. One is the project that Irma used to show you the first tip and trick with the wind farm evaluation project. But the one that I'm going to present to you today is called Senayoki 5D. Is a project that the user prepared because they wanted to show the implementation of OpenCities Planner in urban and environmental planning. And they wanted to show that OpenCities Planner can enable to achieve the demonstration of a zoning program. The user has also been currently working on another project that they want to present the possibilities of utilizing OpenCities Planner for the use of building permitting based on the authorities trying to assist the digital building permitting issuing process, which is also very cool. So I just wanted to share that with you so that you can use OpenCities Planner for different scopes as well, like building permitting. Moving on, going to Australia. This is a collaboration project between Bentley and OpenCities Planner and Cinder Trains. And the scope of the project here was to show that combining a digital software with their data sources can enable digital planning and also inspections. So they have prepared this video that presents this project. So I'm going to let the video talk about this project itself.
The goal of this project was to test the hypothesis that we could use digital twin software with our existing data sources to do virtual planning and inspections. This would create efficiencies, improve safety, and deliver new capabilities when maintaining our assets in the track corridor. Let's have a look at what we found.
One of our principles was that digital twins can be made up of layers of data from existing data sources and existing departments, brought together in a common digital twin environment, and the data change can be managed over time. Using a simple maturity model, we can progressively increase the fidelity and usefulness of the digital twin by adding more layers of data. And we did that throughout this project to validate that hypothesis. We started out with GIS data, included aerial imagery, added in drone data that had been reconstructed in 3D from drone photography, and tested it out in applications like virtual planning, including the ability to work in 3D for trackside planning, measuring clearances, defining work areas, and so on. In addition to that virtual planning, we looked at asset strategy, being able to bring in condition data, display that thematically on different places in the network, and drill down to the existing data source behind the scenes. We could also apply the same concept to point assets, such as point machines, and their access data from a predictive condition model to see the proposed degradation of the equipment over time. We also like to link to existing line of business applications, so displaying asset condition data and then drilling down to things like Power BI. Moving on to asset planning, we can leverage a lot of different data types, including LiDAR across different sections of the network. Drilling down to make this LiDAR more discoverable and more accessible is an important part of giving digital context to the decision making that needs to be made. We can even display the location of front of train imagery, find the image that's closest to the track where you want to work, navigate along the track to get just the right point of view, and then take a look at the piece of equipment you might want to be working on. This can include collaborating with others by creating annotations to indicate the type of work that you're going to do, using the annotation tools for planning in a collaborative way in a 3D context. We're also able to work either in panorama mode or in point cloud mode, depending on the data that's available. Position management and understanding work in a position is vital, so we can visually display position locations as well as the assets and notifications that are active within the position that we're working on. As we plan our work inside that area with an emphasis on safety, we can plan where we're going to work and annotate for the benefit of others the work area that might be available and control that visibility in a multi-user environment. There are other types of data that are valuable for planning here as well. Of course, GIS data lets us know locations along the track, as well as where the nearest access gates might be, for example, for planning access to the site, and even the location of underground services like cabling and so on can all be other layers of data within our digital twin. And if the maintenance work is on a facility, then we can bring in BIM or engineering models and not only see those models of the buildings to be worked on, but also bring along with them the properties of engineering properties and drawing management properties that might go with them.
So that was Sydney Trains, and moving on to our guest presenter for the day, as I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, today we have Gerfo from France. So Philippe is going to have a short presentation on their project. So I'm going to ask Philippe to share his screen. So Philippe, you can take over. Let's give him a minute or two.
It might be that we would need to unmute Philippe or something. I don't know if he has the rights to.
Right. And also,
I have provided, it's fine.
allow screen sharing too, please.
Yes, you can start screen sharing.
No, I can't. There it is. Hi, so I'm Philippe Grandorge from Gerfo in France, and I'm going to present this small project of the city of Les Mureaux, which is not far from Paris. This city used to have a rather bad reputation because of all the buildings and inhabitants, and for several years they have done many developments in the town to improve both for the inhabitants and from the outside people to make this reputation better. And so we've worked for several years with them, first with photos and then with panoramas, and then they asked for a 3D view. So the first thing we did, and it's rather a small project right now, but I'll explain later why it's nevertheless interesting. So we made a first part of the project, which is to make a 3D view of the city with the context capture. And then they asked us to include all interesting features of the town, such as economy, companies, everything which is related to culture and sports, all the public services, all the parks and green spaces, and also the main projects of the town. So that both the inhabitants and the people from outside the town could see what was going on in the town. So each of those represents one of the public services. You have the schools, kindergartens, high schools, and all of these have descriptions. So you see it's a very heavy use of the POIs. Oh, you say POI. And okay. So right now, this is all there is. And why is this interesting? Because this is a small town with very limited financing and funding, sorry, and they nevertheless want to have a 3D model with features that can be displayed to show how the town is improving. They have limited funding, so and they also don't have people able to create this model. So they asked Gerfo to do it for them. And one interesting thing is that they can share the cost of the license, which they can't afford, with other projects that Gerfo is hosting on the OCP license. What's interesting about that is that, to begin with, we made the 3D model, then we added all the POIs, the POIs, and this is really basic. And then they said, oh, can we do something else with that? And then there are projects like this one. It's another OCP project based on the same 3D view, but here it's to describe, I have this layer here, which is loading, to describe the future buildings around the station. The station is this small triangle right down here. It's loading. It's a bit slow. And we worked with an architect which is planning to remove these buildings and replace them with, hopefully they will appear with, well, not appearing apparently. So the idea is to model the future buildings which will be in there to replace the ones they are going to remove. Why isn't it not working? Ah, there it is. So this is just white boxes. It's nothing very realistic, but it's just the beginning of the project. So the city is little by little discovering that this software can help them to describe what will happen in the future in the city. And starting from the POISE, which was the first project, they are slowly beginning to understand that more things can be done with OCP. Of course, it's got nothing to do with the previous example you showed where there are lots of bells and whistles. But then when we visit potential customers, most of them are not really aware of what can be done, and we have to start slowly to make them interested in the technology. And then once they have the first project I showed just before, then they realize what can be done and then ask for more. And little by little, across the years, they will ask for more projects, more complex, and probably interface database and things like that. And so that's the interesting thing when you have a very small customer who's not very keen on that sort of thing, and they'll ask for a long-term development with this tool. Thank you.
Great, thank you again, Philippe, on that. So that was it for the day. So once again, I would like to thank you all. Just to remind you again that you can always submit your own project like Yerfo did today, so you can take the opportunity to present that in one of our upcoming webinars. You can send your nominations and suggestions on my personal email. You can find it here. And as always, we would like your feedback after this webinar. What would you like to see more? What you didn't like, probably, what tips or tricks or anything that you would like to see on an upcoming webinar. And once again, you can also stay connected with us, subscribe for our newsletters, visit our support, blog posts, and communities. So if you have any questions, you can just leave them on the chat right now. We had previously a question from a user that was asking about AI models publicly available, and that so far AI models are only accessible if the user can log in, but we are working on that. So we hope that soon enough we will be able to have AI models available for everyone. If we have any more questions, you can leave them here. If we don't have any, and since it's time to conclude, I would like to thank you all once again for attending and joining us today. The recorded version of this webinar will be available for you to share with more people, and you can revisit and rewatch it whenever you want. We have another question right now. AI models, when they will be available for export, 360 views, etc. When AI models will be available for the public, then yes, these exports will be available as well.
Well,
You can also mention that.
Yeah, I think 360 export, exporting and 360 views of AI models, that will be later. Maybe we will do 360 views of them end of the year earliest. And exporting, that's not in the current roadmap right now. So
Good. Any more questions?
I had a question on the styles that I showed in design review. So I'm just gonna quickly hijack the screen again and show very
Sure.
quickly how to do those styles that I just showed in the Snapchats. But before I share my screen, I just wanted to thank Philippe on the presentation and that I agree with your approach. I think it is great. Very often when we talk to new users and often cities, they ask us how to start with OCP because they see like overwhelming projects and they think they don't have the data, they don't know how to start. And what we usually answer them is to start small, exactly the way that you showed it here. So you start with a background, you start with some poise explaining what the city is working on or what the theme is that the city wants to communicate with the users, and slowly then you build up to a more serious project. So that's literally what we advise our users as well. So thank you very much for showing that type of workflow here as well. Okay, back to I'm sharing the screen here. Okay, so I prepared again this model, and here I'm going to show very, very fast how to change those views. So there's this button here in Design Review where they have some preset different stylings that you can just click on and then use those. So here I went here with hidden lines. You could do solid fill, you could do the wireframe one that I showed that was very heavy. And then in each one of these views, you can again adjust by toggling. Do you want the visible edges or do you want it all in monochrome? So this looks, I think, better if it's here with monochrome, etc. So just by toggling these slides here, you can do a lot of customization on how your iModel looks like. And then you go here again, you create a snapshot of your view, and then you can add that to OCP. So just really quickly to show that this is where you change the style of your iModel. So back to Dora.
Thank you. So I think that was it for the day. So thank you everyone for joining once again, and we hope we see you all on an upcoming webinar of OpenCities Planner. So thank you all.